No. Sorry, we'll talk about the video in a moment. This takes priority right now. Then I'll send a kissy sticker, little tilde at the end of the sentence, and we're good to go. It is so absurdly hot in here. I'm gonna open my window. Oh, there's a dead bug in my window. Huh. A snack for later. All right, today I want to give some tips or advice for first-time furry convention goers, along with talking about my personal experience from when I first went to a furry convention like 6 years ago. Oh my god, it's been 6 years. The first furry convention I went to, by the way, was Anther New England 2018, which I just went to like a month ago in the year 2024. So yeah, 6 years, give or take, which is also the anniversary of me joining the furry fandom. Yeah, fun little fact. My first furry convention was when I decided I wanted to be a furry. I have gotten a lot of questions recently in my streams of people asking, I'm going to my first furry convention. Any tips that you can give me? What should I know about it? Is there anything that I should do there or should do ahead of time? And all of these are very valid questions, so I thought, why not try and answer as many of them in this video today? So to properly start things off, I want to answer the question of what advice I would give to someone who's going to their first furry convention ever. And this advice just goes for anyone in general, like whether or not you've met furries IRL, you've seen furry convention videos on YouTube, you think you have an idea of what the experience might be like, or you might have none of that. You might be going in very socially anxious and you're nervous, you don't know what to do. This advice applies to everyone out there. If you are going to your first ever furry convention, bring a friend with you, specifically a friend who does not mind helping you out, maybe doing you a solid, doing you a favor, to go to a furry convention with you, help you have a good time, help you be more social, or just being a buddy to go around with so that you're not anxious and alone. That is the number one advice I will always give to anyone. Even if you're not going to your first furry convention, I'll still give that advice. Like, I'm socially anxious, so I always want to go to conventions with friends and I want to spend time with them. I don't really go to conventions alone per se. If I don't know any friends that are going to a con, then I likely won't be going to a con. Bringing someone that can help alleviate the anxiety, or better yet, understands that you might be socially anxious and can help you get out there, whether it's saying hi to fursuiters, want to get a picture with them or a hug, want to say hi to certain vendors in the dealer's den, or going to certain panels so that you're not walking into them alone. I just hit my mic. Don't know if it made a sound there, but hopefully it didn't because that was a really good audio take. I will tell you in that part of it, there is strength in numbers, especially with someone that you are familiar with and comfortable with. So that's why I recommend bringing someone who does not mind going to a furry convention, might actually want to go with you, or someone that you know would do a favor for you in that end. So bring a friend, bring a friend, bring a friend. There's the advice, the main advice. The rest of the experience kind of follows from there, which actually another piece of advice from what I mentioned earlier, whatever you think you're going to expect your experience to be like, it won't be like that when you get there and are actually experiencing it. Say you look at all of these con videos from like Anthrocon before you go to Anthrocon itself. You think, okay, based on how I see this con going, this is how I'm going to expect it to go for me. Usually, like 99% of the time, it does not go that way. Even if you visualize a furry convention from the experiences that people tell you, or videos or vlogs of the con on YouTube, it doesn't fully encapsulate the experience. And that's why I kind of stopped doing con vlogs in general, not just because they're hard to put together, sorry, but also because even though I'm showcasing my experience and what my viewpoint of the con was, it doesn't perfectly encapsulate what the furry convention experience is like, especially for those that have never been to one before. Because, you know, a lot of it is just like montages of like the hallways, fursuiters with upbeat royalty-free music, some of which gets copyright claims like a month after you upload the video, and it makes me sad because that's just the life that I live. But you get the idea. You won't ever understand the furry convention experience until you're actually there, and your own experience will definitely be different from others. You could have a completely social convention experience, while some people might not even experience the convention in general. They'll just go around, hang out with friends, maybe fursuit here and there, go out to eat with them, and that's really it for the 4 days they're at the con. That's actually me, by the way, for almost every furry convention I've been to this year. And another factor going into it is what you want to get out of the con, like what you want the experience to be. I guess the piece of advice for this would be like, plan out what you're expecting to do at the con, like what you want to mainly be doing. Do you want to do more con stuff? Do you want to socialize with fursuiters? Do you want to say hi to friends? Do you want to explore the local area around the convention space, depending on where it is you're going? Do you want to go to this panel or this event or this meetup? There's a lot of events revolving around a furry convention that you can participate in, and all of it is completely optional. At the end of the day, the time that you spend that weekend is up to you. So going into it, kind of just like get an idea idea of what it is you might want to do. Like maybe make a little bit of a checklist. There's usually like a con schedule on the con website that you can check, or when you get to the convention itself, there's like a con book to show what events, panels, con activities are going on that you can participate in. Because more often than not, when you're at your first con, you're going to likely be participating in a lot of con activities. Like every single time I've seen someone go to their first furry convention on YouTube, they've almost always just gone to panels and events at the con. And that's absolutely okay. Spend the time however you would like. But just that's what I usually picture the first time furry convention experience being for some people. Just trying to get a feel for what a con is like. Because every con is going to be different. You know, if you're going to a small con versus like MFF, the vibe is going to be extremely different. And then another piece of advice that a friend of mine gave is if you have this idea of like people that you want to meet at a con, cut that list in half. That's the reasonable amount of people that you're going to see or things you're going to do. Because the magic about furry conventions, outside of planning events, which you can't really plan anything. That's another thing. A lot of things are very sporadic. You can plan panels or events or things you might want to go to. Fursuit Parade, you can probably watch that. Fursuit Dance Comp, you can go and see that. This certain panel at this certain time, you can go and see that. It's in the schedule. But a lot of the times, the magic of furry conventions, specifically for me, comes down to doing things in the moment. Like what new fun thing is happening in the con lobby at 2 in the morning? I know, oddly specific example, but that's where a lot of weird things happen, and it's usually really funny. So even if you're planning things out, make sure to take some time just to really enjoy it in the moment. Whether that's just sitting around in the con lobby, you know, interacting with fursuiters, whatever it may be. But you know what? I've been rambling on for long enough. I've given a few advice points that may or may not work. Let's just talk about my first time going to a con, just so you maybe get a picture of it. So like I said, the first furry convention I attended was Anther New England 2018, about 6 years ago. At the time, I was in college, and one of my fraternity brothers had offered to drive me to the con since I was interested in going. I also wasn't a furry at the time. I just kind of wanted to see what it was like to maybe gauge if I wanted to join the furry fandom, because at the time I was interested, but you know, weird story for later. But the point is, I had a friend who was already going as is and offered to give me a ride to the con, and then I'd go back with him. It would just be a fun little adventure for a Saturday, which we ended up going the Saturday of the con, which is also one of the busiest days of any furry convention. So little advice point, if you're going for a day, make it like the Friday or the Saturday of the con. That's how you can gauge like how much energy there will be at that con in a certain time, because that's just when most people are there. But we didn't have any expectations going into this. We hadn't even been to a furry convention prior to this. So luckily, I had someone with me to join me on this adventure. So the anxiety that I was feeling of going into a brand new social situation was more or less alleviated, not completely gone, but it was much better. And also, if I hadn't had my friend, we would have absolutely gotten lost in Boston. Because with having absolutely zero expectations with going into a furry convention, we thought, oh, it's gotta be in some convention space, right? So we were thinking, oh, the big convention space in the Seaport District in Boston, but the directions were taking us to a random hotel, so we were really confused. We didn't know what we were looking for. So we ended up parking in the Boston Commons. It's like underneath the park area, if you're familiar with Boston at all. And so we went up into the park and we started seeing fursuiters walking around. So we're like, oh, we're on the right track. Where's the con? And then eventually we just didn't know where to go. So we stopped one of the fursuiters who was walking by. I was like, hey, do you know where the con is? We're looking for the convention for A&E. And they were like, oh, you don't know? I'm like, yeah, do you know where it is? And they're like, oh, it's that way, Boston Park Plaza. I'm like, thank you. Hope you have a good day. And they're like, yeah, cool. So just for the picture, first impression of interacting with the furry wasn't the best. Didn't think too much of it because I was too busy trying to get from point A to point B. But eventually we get to the Boston Park Plaza, which was the old location for Anther New England. And that's where we saw the convention itself, which we didn't know was actually the convention, because we ended up going to the elevators thinking, oh, the convention space has got to be on another level. We're in the hotel lobby right now, right? So if we go up in the elevators, like, we'll find the convention space eventually, right? Well, come to find out, for like 5 to 10 minutes, we were just aimlessly going up and down the elevators between the different floors of rooms in the hotel, thinking, oh, where's the convention space? And then we get back down to the main level and we're just audibly asking ourselves, like, where the hell is the convention space? And then a random guy in one of those safety vests, I'm assuming it was, you know, a con staff, and they're like, you're in the con space, welcome to A&E. And I'm like, okay, now I feel stupid. So finally we had someone we could talk to. That's when we asked him where registration was. And they directed us to it, which was on the second floor. Who would have thought it was just a floor up from where we were? And then we went there, got all registered. That's where I met one of my old high school friends who was actually volunteered at the con, who I reconnected with. I'm like, oh, you're at A&E? That makes a lot of sense now. We both had that moment where we saw each other and they're like, wait, are you this person? We went to high school together. That makes a lot of sense now. So I ended up getting registered. I can't remember what my actually, hold on. I know what my badge name is. I kept it this whole time. This is my day pass. Saturday day pass. Beta 8. Wow, I didn't even choose... Excuse me. I didn't even choose a badge name. I just kind of went with my usual name. But yeah, a little bit of info on it. Anthro New England 2018. The last weekend in February, Boston Park Plaza. What a time. I knew that little thing that I had hanging above my bed would be useful. So yeah, there's my first ever con badge. This theme was oddly fitting for me if you think about it. Anyways, back to the furry convention experience. I got my badge. I was all set to go. What do I do now? Well, I ended up kind of just wandering around aimlessly with my friend. Wherever he ended up wanting to go, I kind of just followed him. And there was a point where we went off to do something else with another friend that was there, so I was just kind of left by myself. And I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't do much at all. Like, I maybe perused around the dealer's den, just walked around, and then I walked around that big square space outline that was the Boston Park Plaza from before, because I didn't know what else to do. You know, furry conventions are a social experience. I didn't go there with any friends in mind to meet. Like, yeah, I was looking to meet Majira or Kyle at the time because we were, I guess, acquaintances, but he wasn't like a friend that I was going to be going to like hang out with. I was going to meet him, say hi, introduce myself, and that was it. Because at that point, I was just kind of that guy that pestered him on Twitter, and that was it. I did have a couple of moments where I did see some fursuiters that I did want to go up to, say hi, get a hug from. One of these fursuiters actually is one of my best friends today, known as Pineapple Fox. It's always the funniest story ever. When I was walking around, you know, just by myself, aimlessly wandering, I saw this big yellow fursuiter. Had the thickest thighs I'd ever seen. And he had this beach lifeguard attire. I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. And I saw a couple of people walking up to him, wanting to get pictures, you know, wanting to get hugs from him. I'm like, wow, he looks pretty cool. I hope I get to meet him next time I go to A&E. Like, my plan at the time was like, okay, he looks cool. I don't know who he is, so I'm just not gonna say hi until I know who he properly is, so I have a little bit of an in with getting to meet someone new. So I just kind of appreciated his fursuit from a distance, and that was it. Isn't it just funny how life works out sometimes? Literally, like, after the con too, I ended up like messaging him on Twitter like, hey, I recognized you in your fursuit at the con. I wanted to say hi, but I was a little nervous. Sorry about that, but I hope you had a good con. You have a really cute suit, and I hope I get to see you and say hi again next year. And then just next year, we ended up hanging out for most of that con. It's just really funny to think that that's how it ended up working that way. But either way, back to my first furry convention. Other than that one moment of just appreciating Pineapple Fox's suit, I really didn't do anything else. I just kept walking around. So it wasn't really as much of a fulfilling experience as I would have liked. Realistically, I could have gone up to some fursuiters and said hi, or like maybe checked out a panel that was going on in another space, but I didn't end up doing that because I was so caught up in the awe of the convention space around me that I didn't think like, oh, maybe there's like a con book, maybe there's a website to see what panels or events are going on this evening that I could maybe check out or walk in on. Not that I would have done that because anxiety was through the roof in that moment, but it's something to keep in mind for those that are going to their first furry convention. Don't do what I did. I mean, it's okay to do it. I don't want to say like, don't do it, like that's horrible. You know, just so you have a fulfilling and better experience than I did. My first experience was eye-opening. I became a furry because of it, because I really enjoyed it. But I also, you know, want people to have a better experience than I did of just wandering around aimlessly, not saying hi to anyone else. And yeah, eventually my friend ended up catching back up with me and we wandered around for a little bit. There was a fan of my channel that ended up saying hi. A couple of their friends ended up introducing themselves, saying hi to me. It was really, really sweet and endearing. It got my confidence up a little bit more than it was originally. So it was just a nice little moment. And then after that, Majira ended up walking down in fursuit. So I went over to say hi to him, but I kind of had to be pushed over by my friend because I was like, are you sure that this is Majira? And he's like, yeah, it's the only tall red fursuiter out here. I'm like, are you sure it's Majira? And so he eventually pushed me over to say hi, and then I said hi, and then Kyle gave me a big hug, and it felt really nice and warm, and it was something I really needed in a moment where I was not feeling great because of anxiety and also previous things with life. So honestly, I think that hug turned me into a furry now that I think about it. Like, it was just in fursuit, and then I'm like, oh, hi, Majira, it's me, Beta. And then he's like, hi, Beta, nice to meet you. And then he gave me a big hug. I'm like, oh, this is nice. Oh, I like this. And that's when it just like switch flipped, wanted to become a furry. There you go. It's also so funny too. Like, almost every person that I interacted with at that con, I ended up becoming friends with later. It's just it's so weird how life works out that way. Not that that's gonna work out for everyone, you know. There's another lesson to be said here about, like, the first people you meet in furry might not be friends with you in the future, or you might not be friends with them in the future, but that's another conversation for another day. Let's just keep it with the furry convention experience. But after I just said hi to Majira for a little bit and hung out, talked with him, my friends and I ended up going to get Chinese food, and it was really, really good. And then that was the furry convention experience. That was it. We didn't do anything else. We went back home. Now, for me, I felt great. I felt like I had stepped out of my shell, even though it was like post like 3 or 4 hours of me randomly wandering around the con for a bit until that point had happened in the evening. But hopefully, you know, this story gives some context as to some things that could have gone a bit differently had I just gone and done it. Like, if I had a little bit more confidence, or if I had that friend around me in the moment to help out. And obviously, you know, it's not his fault, my friend's fault, or it's not even any friend's fault that a furry convention doesn't go great, or I'm not as social. Realistically, it came down to me, and I was okay with whatever happened. And that's also, I guess, another good piece of advice for it. You know, like, you can use your friend to help you socialize, but don't also let that be a crutch for you enjoying a furry convention or experiencing it. At the end of the day, your experience does come down to you. They can help, but they shouldn't be the one to make the experience great. And at the end of the day, it does come down to you. Sometimes some things can't be managed. Like, if you're looking to say hi to a certain person that, you know, might be busy, you might not be able to do that at the con. I still had a good time at A&E. It had its ups and downs. A lot of it was very overwhelming for me socially, but in the end, I'm glad that I did it because I broke a little bit more out of my shell. And if I hadn't gone to that first con, I wouldn't be here today. If you think about it in some sense, with the butterfly effect, chain effect, domino effect, I don't know. And that's the last advice point that I have with regards to attending your first furry convention. It might be nerve-wracking, you might be anxious, it might be overwhelming, but if you want to do it and you want to attend it, just do it. I mean, obviously, if you can't, you know, that's valid. There are reasonings for that. But if you really want to do it and want to get the ball rolling with going to furry conventions, socializing within the IRL aspect of furry, just do it. Like, that's the best advice that I could give even to myself. Like, like, if you see a fursuiter that you really want to say hi to, maybe get a picture with, maybe get a hug from, just do it. Like, I could have probably been in such a different situation had I just gone over to Pineapple and said hi and asked for a hug or introduced myself or whatever it might be. You know, something, regret. I'm not really sure where this is leading, but you get the idea, hopefully. I don't know. But either way, that's more or less the advice that I have for going to your first furry convention. Bring a friend, try to see what you might want to do at the con in terms of convention events. You know, obviously register, do all that other stuff at a con. If you're going for a day, go like Saturday or something. And then finally, if you're just looking to do your first con and you have the opportunity to do so, but you're like, oh, I'm too nervous, you're worried about this or that going wrong, just do it. Obviously, it's up to you to decide. But keep in mind, if I hadn't gone to A&E 2018, who's to say that I wouldn't have gone to furry conventions to follow? Who's to say I wouldn't be a furry today or in the position I am today? Maybe that's to be desired, the position I'm in today, but I don't know. I just try to live every day in the moment and enjoy what I have. So on that note, thank you all for watching. If you do have any other advice points that I might have missed in this video with regards to your first furry convention experience, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, especially for those that might be using this video to kind of get a gauge of what they should expect going to their first con, or if they're looking for tips or advice, kind of like everyone that's been asking me before this video. I'll end up liking and hearting the advice points that I think are very good and add either to the ones that I already have or completely new ones that I didn't even mention, because realistically, I do want to give resources for those that might be asking questions that there might not be any answer for out there, and that's what I kind of want to achieve with some of these videos here and there. So, hey, if I did that, that's awesome. Let me know as well. And also, shameless self-promo time! I enabled channel memberships for this channel, so if you want to support what I do with these furry info videos, be sure to check that out. One of the main perks that I have for channel members is if you have a question that you want me to answer in a video, you're likely excuse me, I will very likely end up doing that video covering your question and featuring the comment that you leave about it. So there's that as well. You know, I'm trying to think of what I can offer for this, but at the end of the day, the whole channel membership thing is supposed to be like, hey, if you like what I do on here and you want to support it further, that's the best way to do so. But either way, that's about it for me. It's getting late. I'm gonna go and order a pizza. Hope you all have a good one. Thank you all so much for everything on here. And that's about gonna do it for me. Bye, guys.